The information provided in this presentation is strictly for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute professional travel, financial, legal, or investment advice. The hospitality industry, particularly the luxury sectors in high-demand regions like the United States West Coast, is subject to dynamic pricing, fluctuating service standards, shifting management structures, and volatile market conditions. Booking travel accommodations involves significant financial commitments, and the perceived value of any property can change rapidly based on seasonal variations, localized economic factors, and corporate restructuring. Any discussion of hotel quality, pricing strategies, or experiential value in this video is based on historical trends, independent case studies, and publicly available data, which may not reflect future realities. Viewers are strongly advised to conduct their own independent due diligence, cross-reference multiple data points, and carefully review all terms, conditions, cancellation policies, and hidden resort fees before making any financial commitments or travel arrangements. Do not base your travel or financial decisions solely on the content of this video. What if the vast majority of your dream California vacation budget is actively being squandered on a hospitality industry that runs entirely on outdated reputations and aggressive marketing algorithms? Consider the reality of the modern American domestic traveler. You save for months, perhaps years, to orchestrate the quintessential West Coast expedition. You envision the sun-drenched rolling vineyards of Napa Valley and the palm-lined cinematic streets of Los Angeles. You scroll through endless booking platforms, relying on star ratings and heavily curated photography to make a financial commitment that often rivals the cost of a down payment on a vehicle. Yet, historical trends and extensive consumer sentiment case studies reveal a deeply unsettling reality. A staggering percentage of travelers visiting California for the first time report profound disappointment and financial regret regarding their accommodation choices. They arrive to find that the sprawling estate they booked in wine country is situated directly adjacent to a loud, multi-lane highway, or that their glamorous Beverly Hills suite is a decaying relic of the 1990s, desperately in need of renovation and staffed by overwhelmed employees. This is not just about a temporary inconvenience. This is about the catastrophic loss of your most non-renewable resource, which is your time, coupled with the drain of thousands of hard-earned dollars. The California hospitality market is one of the most ruthless and sophisticated ecosystems in the global travel industry. It is designed to maximize revenue per available room, while frequently minimizing the actual delivery of luxury. Hotels in these regions have mastered the art of the digital illusion. They understand that by utilizing wide-angle lenses, strategic lighting, and aggressive search engine optimization, they can command premium nightly rates that are entirely divorced from the actual on-the-ground experience. You are not just fighting against bad luck. You are fighting against a highly optimized system designed to separate you from your capital under the guise of an unforgettable getaway. Consider a recent highly documented case study involving a historic, supposedly top-tier property in the heart of Hollywood. For decades, this hotel leveraged its legacy, trading on the names of mid-century celebrities who once frequented its bars. Travelers blindly paid upwards of $800 a night, expecting classic glamour. The potential outcomes for these guests, however, were drastically different from the marketed fantasy. Upon arrival, guests were met with deferred maintenance, peeling wallpaper disguised by dim corridor lighting, and an underlying corporate structure that had slashed operational budgets to the bone. The swimming pool, featured prominently in every advertisement, was perpetually overcrowded and serviced by a completely inadequate food and beverage team. The travelers who fell into this trap did not fail because they lacked funds. They failed because they lacked the analytical framework to separate a hotel's historical reputation from its present-day operational reality. This structural deception is equally prevalent, if not more insidious, in the agricultural luxury zones of Napa Valley. In Napa, the premium charged for proximity to prestigious appellations is astronomical. Many boutique inns and sprawling resorts charge thousands of dollars for a weekend stay, justifying the cost through the sheer geographical prestige of the zip code. However, a deeper analysis of the market shows that many of these properties offer amenities that are standard in corporate airport hotels, masking their deficiencies behind the word rustic. Travelers frequently find themselves trapped in properties that enforce draconian minimum stay requirements and exorbitant hidden resort fees that cover little more than mediocre morning coffee and a weak wireless internet connection. Later in this comprehensive analysis, we are going to expose the mechanics behind these failures and, more importantly, reveal the absolute pinnacle of West Coast hospitality. We are going to meticulously break down a hidden architectural masterpiece in Napa Valley that is quietly setting a new global standard for immersive, agrarian luxury, operating completely outside the traditional, overcrowded tourist corridors. We will examine exactly how their staff-to-guest ratio and their integration with the surrounding terroir create an environment that justifies its economic positioning. Conversely, we will tear back the facade of the Los Angeles hospitality scene to reveal an urban sanctuary that historically provides an absolute masterclass in privacy, security, and elite service, contrasting it sharply with the overpriced tourist traps dominating the Sunset Strip. You will discover the exact metrics you need to evaluate a property before you ever input your credit card information. For the American traveler preparing to invest significant capital into a West Coast itinerary, this presentation is designed to serve as your definitive, impenetrable shield against marketing deception. The problem you face today is overwhelming analysis paralysis combined with a high probability of severe financial inefficiency. The sheer volume of options, coupled with the unreliability of crowdsourced reviews, makes it nearly impossible to make an informed decision based solely on standard internet research. The solution lies in abandoning the traditional metrics of star ratings and promotional brochures. Instead, we must adopt a rigorous, data-driven approach to evaluating hospitality real estate. By dissecting the geographical positioning, the historical trends in management changes, the true meaning behind recent renovations, and the localized economic factors that dictate service quality, you will be equipped to make authoritative decisions. You will learn to identify the subtle red flags hidden within a hotel's booking policies and the green lights that indicate a property is actually investing its revenue back into the guest experience. We will explore the specific logistical challenges of navigating the vast expanse of Los Angeles and how choosing a hotel in the wrong neighborhood can mathematically eliminate your chances of enjoying your itinerary due to transit times. We will decode the microclimates and distinct viticultural areas of Napa to ensure your accommodation aligns perfectly with your specific palate and desired pace. This is about taking total control of your travel capital and ensuring that every single dollar deployed yields the highest possible return in experiential value, comfort, and peace of mind. To achieve this level of control, we must first dismantle the most pervasive misconception about California travel, which is the idea that geographic proximity on a digital map translates to actual convenience on the ground. When you are deploying significant funds for a vacation in 2026, treating Los Angeles or Napa Valley as singular, easily navigable cities is a strategic error that will drastically reduce your experiential return on investment. The infrastructure of the West Coast is heavily segmented, and your accommodation must serve as a calculated logistical command center, not merely a place to store your luggage. Let us begin by analyzing the complex geography of Los Angeles through a specific case study. Consider an American traveler named Michael, a corporate consultant from Chicago planning a high-end getaway in the current year of 2026. Michael allocates a premium budget for a highly aesthetic, heavily marketed boutique property situated right on the boardwalk of Venice Beach. His itinerary, however, is heavily anchored on the east side of the city, including dining reservations in Silver Lake, industry meetings in downtown Los Angeles, and an evening event at the Griffith Observatory. By prioritizing oceanfront aesthetics over logistical reality, Michael completely miscalculates his transit times. The potential outcomes for this trip shift rapidly from relaxation to extreme transportation fatigue. Historical trends in Los Angeles traffic data, particularly along the infamous 405 and 10 interstate corridors, demonstrate that a 10-mile journey during peak hours can easily consume 90 minutes of travel time. Furthermore, rideshare pricing in Los Angeles operates on highly aggressive dynamic surge models. By the end of his 4-day trip, Michael has spent roughly $900 simply sitting in the back of various vehicles, losing approximately 16 hours of usable vacation time to the freeway system. The hotel itself may have been architecturally stunning, but his capital deployment was highly inefficient because he failed to align his accommodation with his operational radius. If your primary goal is high-end retail, fine dining, and museum access, anchoring yourself in Beverly Hills or West Hollywood provides a distinct tactical advantage. You are intentionally positioning yourself at the epicenter of the cultural action, effectively insulating yourself from the most severe traffic bottlenecks and minimizing your reliance on the broader freeway system. You must seek out properties that understand this localized isolation, creating heavily staffed fortresses of tranquility amidst the dense urban sprawl. Imagine if you applied this exact same strategic failure to the sprawling agricultural landscape of Napa Valley. Napa is not a compact walking town. It is a 30-mile stretch comprised of distinct microregions, ranging from the densely populated urban center of downtown Napa in the south to the secluded geothermal luxury of Calistoga in the far north. Let us examine the data from another 2026 case study involving a family from Texas. They secured what appeared to be a phenomenal nightly rate at a large corporate-owned resort situated on the extreme southern edge of the valley, directly adjacent to a major commercial highway. However, their primary objective was to visit highly exclusive, limited production estates concentrated in the Oakville and Rutherford Appalachians, located deep in the central and northern sections of the valley. In the current economic landscape, securing private, commercially insured transportation for a full day of wine tasting safely and legally can easily exceed $1,200 per day. The perceived savings on their nightly room rate evaporated entirely when factored against the exorbitant logistical costs required to access their desired destinations. Even worse, they spent a massive portion of their trip navigating heavy single-lane traffic on Highway 29. We must evaluate hospitality not just as a bed and a shower, but as a strategic launchpad. The highest value return comes from properties that seamlessly integrate into your specific daily itinerary. When evaluating potential accommodations, you must mathematically calculate the true cost of the stay. This formula must include the base room rate, mandatory daily resort fees, overnight parking tariffs, and the projected transportation costs required to execute your plans from that specific geographic starting point. Let us go much deeper into the architectural and operational realities of these elite properties. The modern luxury traveler is demanding far more than high thread count linens and marble bathroom fixtures. They are demanding hyper-personalized, anticipatory service that systematically mitigates the friction of travel. You want to identify properties demonstrating a documented commitment to maintaining exceptionally high staff-to-guest ratios. Historical trends in the luxury sector prove time and time again that physical amenities eventually degrade, but exceptional, intuitive service creates permanent, positive psychological anchors. Imagine if you arrived at a property where the concierge team had already analyzed your dining preferences based on a detailed pre-arrival consultation, cross-referenced those preferences with the most sought-after culinary experiences in the region, and secured your table weeks before you even boarded your flight. Imagine if the valet service operated with such military precision that your vehicle was waiting for you running and climate-controlled exactly 3 minutes before your scheduled departure time, completely eliminating the standard 20-minute wait in a crowded lobby. This is the stark difference between passive lodging and active hospitality management. This is exactly where your travel capital actually goes to work for you, generating measurable returns in time saved and stress avoided. When we thoroughly analyze the top-performing properties in these specific California markets, a crystal-clear pattern emerges. The truly elite hotels do not compete on price. They compete aggressively on friction reduction. They systematically remove the barriers between the traveler and the experience. However, identifying these highly optimized properties requires navigating a treacherous minefield of deceptive marketing and manipulated online reviews. In Los Angeles, many iconic, world-famous hotels are actively coasting on their historical significance. They have not executed a meaningful structural renovation in over 15 years. Their plumbing systems are failing, their acoustic insulation is virtually non-existent, and their frontline staff is overwhelmed by high turnover rates and inadequate training. Yet, they continue to command ultra-premium pricing solely because their brand identity is deeply embedded in the cultural zeitgeist. You are essentially paying a massive premium for a famous logo while receiving a severely compromised, outdated product. To counteract this deception, you must look beyond cosmetic upgrades. A fresh coat of paint and modern lobby furniture do not constitute a renovation. That is merely cosmetic misdirection designed to photograph well for online booking engines. You must look for properties that have recently invested heavy capital into critical infrastructure, such as advanced climate control systems, hospital-grade air filtration, and state-of-the-art soundproofing technologies. These are the unseen structural elements that definitively dictate the quality of your sleep and, consequently, the overall success of your financial investment in the trip. As we transition from this analytical framework to direct, actionable application, we are going to expose a highly specific property in the northern reaches of Napa Valley that perfectly exemplifies this high-yield, low-friction philosophy. This is a property that has systematically eliminated the standard pain points of agricultural tourism, replacing them with a highly curated, remarkably private ecosystem. But before we reveal exactly how they have engineered this environment, and why it successfully commands the specific rates it does, we must first understand the devastating flaw in how most travelers attempt to book wine country experiences, a massive vulnerability that this specific hotel has brilliantly weaponized to its absolute advantage. The devastating flaw lies in the deeply ingrained consumer habit of the a la carte vacation assembly. The modern American traveler has been conditioned by decades of online booking engine conditioning to separate their accommodation from their itinerary. They view the hotel strictly as a holding pen for their luggage and a place to sleep, while viewing the surrounding region as a vast, disconnected menu of experiences they must individually hunt down, negotiate, and secure. In the highly competitive, hyper-regulated environment of the 2026 Napa Valley hospitality sector, this fragmented approach is a mathematical recipe for logistical collapse. Since the sweeping local agricultural ordinances enacted over the past few years, the era of casually driving up Highway 29 and walking into a prestigious tasting room is entirely extinct. The most coveted vineyards, the ones producing the critically acclaimed, low-yield vintages that justify a trip to Northern California, operate strictly on an allocation and private appointment basis. They do not advertise to the general public, they do not have signage on the main roads, and they certainly do not have availability for a traveler who attempts to book a tasting a week before their arrival. Consider a highly illustrative case study from the spring of 2026 involving Sarah, a senior marketing executive from Atlanta. Sarah allocated an extensive budget for a 5-day Napa Valley excursion, determined to experience the absolute apex of American winemaking. Operating under the flawed a la carte methodology, she secured a beautiful, highly rated boutique suite in downtown Napa. She then spent upwards of 30 hours over 3 months, attempting to contact exclusive estates in the Spring Mountain and Howell Mountain districts. Because she lacked regional leverage and industry relationships, her emails were met with polite automated rejections or placements on multi-year waiting lists. Forced to pivot, she filled her itinerary with massive corporate-owned wineries that accommodate hundreds of tourists a day. The potential outcomes of her trip were severely compromised before she even boarded her flight. When she arrived, she found herself trapped in a cycle of profound tasting fatigue, fighting through crowded tasting bars, listening to scripted, heavily rehearsed corporate talking points, and paying exorbitant tasting fees for commercially widely available wine. Furthermore, her downtown Napa hotel provided zero assistance, offering only a standard printed list of the exact same tourist trap wineries she was already actively trying to avoid. She paid a premium for a luxury bed, but she experienced an entirely pedestrian vacation. Now we must contrast Sarah's highly inefficient capital deployment with the operational masterpiece executed by a specific tier of ultra-luxury, integrated sanctuaries nestled deep within the St. Helena and Calistoga corridors. These elite properties have brilliant insight into the fragmented booking flaw, and have weaponized it by completely reversing the hospitality model. They do not merely sell you a room, they sell you temporary induction into a highly protected, exclusive regional network. These properties function less like traditional hotels and more like private, heavily guarded agricultural clubs. When you analyze the management structure of these elite resorts, you will find that their concierge teams are not staffed by entry-level hospitality graduates relying on Google searches. They are staffed by deeply entrenched local industry veterans, former sommeliers, and individuals who possess personal, long-standing relationships with the families operating the most fiercely guarded closed-door estates in the valley. Imagine if your initial booking confirmation initiated a deep, pre-arrival consultation with a dedicated itinerary architect. Imagine if, based on your specific palate profile and seller acquisition goals, this architect silently bypassed the public waiting lists and secured you a private, 2-hour tasting seated at the kitchen table of a third-generation winemaker whose estate produces fewer than 500 cases a year. Imagine if your transportation was not a randomly assigned, chemically scented rideshare vehicle, but a house-owned luxury SUV driven by a staff member who intimately understands the complex, unmarked dirt roads of the Mayacamas Mountains. This is the definition of high-yield travel capital deployment. You are leveraging the hotel's institutional power to access environments that are entirely impenetrable to the standard retail tourist. Let us break down the specific architectural and operational mechanics of one such archetype property located in the northern stretches of the valley. To the untrained eye researching online, their nightly rate of $2,500 appears mathematically absurd. However, A rigorous analysis of their structural inclusions reveals a completely different financial reality. This property utilizes a decentralized footprint. Instead of a massive multi-story structure with long echoing hallways, the accommodation consists of individual freestanding architectural pavilions seamlessly integrated into a working vineyard. This structural decision permanently eliminates the primary friction point of traditional luxury hotels, which is noise pollution from adjacent guests. The walls are engineered with advanced acoustic dampening materials, and the climate control operates on a silent, radiant system. You are completely isolated from the mechanical hum of traditional hospitality infrastructure. Furthermore, this specific class of property operates on a frictionless inclusion model. The exorbitant hidden fees that plague the rest of the industry are systematically eliminated. The daily resort fee, the mandatory valet parking charge, the heavily inflated minibar pricing, and the predatory room service delivery tariffs are simply non-existent. When you wake up, a customized, locally sourced artisan breakfast is discreetly delivered to your private terrace at the exact temperature and time you requested, without requiring a signature or a standardized gratuity calculation. When you return from an intense day of wine acquisitions, your garments are pressed, and your suite has been perfectly reset for the evening, all executed by a shadow staff that operates with absolute invisibility. By shifting your capital away from the standard, a la carte tourist centers and investing it into these hyper-integrated, high-leverage sanctuaries, the historical trends show a massive increase in actual vacation satisfaction. You eliminate the cognitive load of constantly managing logistics, fighting traffic, and experiencing the stinging rejection of closed doors. You transition from being a stressed, financially drained tourist to being a highly prioritized, protected guest operating within a flawless ecosystem. You are buying time, you are buying access, and you are buying an impenetrable shield against the friction of modern travel. But the true mastery of this high-leverage strategy becomes even more apparent when we transition our focus south. If you think the deceptive marketing and logistical nightmares of Napa Valley are severe, they pale in comparison to the sophisticated extraction mechanisms deployed by the luxury hospitality sector in Los Angeles. To survive the Los Angeles market, we have to completely abandon everything we just learned about agricultural isolation and adopt a radically different tactical approach, one that involves decoding a highly controversial pricing model used by a specific Beverly Hills property that secretly dictates the entire operational standard for West Coast celebrity travel. To understand the Los Angeles luxury market in the current year of 2026, you must first accept that the traditional metrics of hotel valuation are entirely inverted. In a standard hospitality market, a higher nightly rate corresponds linearly with increased square footage, better panoramic views, and closer proximity to major tourist attractions. However, the most exclusive and historically significant properties in Beverly Hills and Bel Air operate on a paradigm known within the industry as the invisibility premium. This is the highly controversial pricing model that dictates the operational standard for elite travel on the West Coast. You are not paying for physical space. You are paying an astronomical premium for the active denial of access to everyone else. You are purchasing a heavily fortified, highly choreographed illusion of absolute isolation in the middle of a metropolitan area containing roughly 13 million people. Let us examine a detailed case study to illustrate the profound difference between standard Los Angeles luxury and the invisibility premium. Consider David, a successful software developer from Austin, Texas, who is orchestrating a high-stakes vacation and investor tour in Los Angeles. Operating on standard logic, David books a highly publicized, structurally beautiful 5-star hotel directly on the Sunset Strip. The property boasts a famous rooftop pool and a lobby bar heavily featured in architectural magazines. David assumes his rate of $1,800 a night buys him a sanctuary. Instead, historical trends regarding these specific high-visibility properties reveal that his capital has merely purchased him a background role in someone else's marketing campaign. Because these high-visibility hotels operate their food and beverage programs as primary revenue generators rather than exclusive guest amenities, their lobbies and pools are constantly flooded with non-guests. When David attempts to retrieve his vehicle from the valet for a crucial morning meeting in Century City, he is trapped behind a chaotic line of rideshare vehicles dropping off aggressive social media influencers and minor industry operators using the hotel as a free networking lounge. When he attempts to relax by the pool, the noise pollution from a commercially sponsored DJ set makes taking a phone call physically impossible. David is experiencing profound logistical friction because he failed to realize that in Los Angeles, If a hotel's public spaces are famous, the paying guest is not the priority. The paying guest is the atmospheric extra providing a backdrop of wealth for the general public. Now, imagine if David had deployed that exact same capital into the Beverly Hills Bastion archetype, a property utilizing the invisibility premium model. From the moment his vehicle breaches the property line, the operational mechanics are entirely different. There is no chaotic public valet stand visible from the street. Instead, his vehicle is directed down a heavily landscaped, curved driveway that intentionally breaks the line of sight from the public road, descending into a biometrically secured subterranean arrival bay. There is no traditional front desk, no line to check in, and absolutely no unauthorized foot traffic. Imagine if, instead of walking through a crowded lobby dragging luggage, David is greeted at the door of his vehicle by a dedicated personal director and escorted directly to a private, keycard-restricted elevator bank that opens solely onto his designated floor. This is not merely a high level of customer service. It is a meticulously engineered security perimeter designed to entirely eliminate random human friction. The controversial aspect of this pricing model is that when you analyze the actual physical room, the square footage might be mathematically smaller than the heavily trafficked hotel on the Sunset Strip, and the interior design might skew towards extreme, understated minimalism rather than flashy opulence. Many novice travelers reviewing these properties online express outrage, failing to understand why a smaller room commands double the nightly rate. They are missing the invisible infrastructure. They are not calculating the immense payroll required to maintain a staff-to-guest ratio of 5:1. They are not valuing the heavily integrated, hospital-grade acoustic dampening materials installed in the walls and ceilings that completely neutralize the sound of the police helicopters that perpetually circle the Los Angeles basin. Furthermore, the true mastery of this operational standard is demonstrated through the deployment of shadow staffing. In standard luxury hotels, housekeeping and room service are highly visible, often disruptive processes. You are forced to interact with carts in the hallways and coordinate cleaning times. In the elite Beverly Hills properties, the architecture itself is designed to support invisibility. Suites are often constructed with dedicated service vestibules and double-sided closets. Imagine if you placed your garments requiring pressing into a specific closet compartment before going to sleep, and by the time you woke up, they had been perfectly steamed and returned to the exact same compartment by a staff member who accessed the rear of the closet from a hidden service corridor without ever stepping foot into your actual living space. Imagine if motion sensors discreetly communicated to the housekeeping staff exactly when you transition from the bedroom to the living room, allowing them to instantly and silently refresh the bedroom while you were completely unaware of their presence. These hyper-specific logistical achievements are precisely what you are funding when you pay $4,000 a night. You are funding a military-grade logistical operation designed to simulate the experience of owning a fully staffed, private residential estate. For the American traveler venturing into the chaos of Los Angeles in 2026, understanding this distinction is the absolute key to maintaining your sanity and protecting your financial investment. You must aggressively audit your own psychological needs before booking. If your goal is to see and be seen, to be in the center of the cultural noise, then the highly publicized tourist centers might serve your purpose, provided you accept the inevitable delays and lack of privacy as the cost of admission. However, if your primary objective is restoration, high-level business focus, and the complete mitigation of urban stress, you must seek out properties that actively penalize non-guest entry and financially prioritize structural seclusion. However, the Beverly Hills Fortress model is fundamentally designed for those who wish to completely detach from the urban environment. What happens when your specific itinerary demands that you integrate into the highly competitive, fast-paced machinery of the Los Angeles entertainment and commercial districts? What if you are coming to California specifically to engage with the city, and retreating to a silent, heavily guarded bunker actually hinders your objectives? There is a highly specialized, entirely different architectural strategy being actively deployed right now, in a select few properties perched precariously in the steep hills directly above Sunset Boulevard and Hollywood. These hotels offer a masterclass in blending panoramic dominance with immediate urban access, but this exact geographical positioning carries a severe, hidden physical risk that corporate hotel management desperately tries to keep scrubbed from their booking pages. It is a terrifying structural reality that could completely paralyze your itinerary and pose a significant threat to your travel capital if you happen to book your stay during the wrong specific climatic window. This climatic window is fundamentally tied to the unique, highly volatile topography of the Santa Monica Mountains, the exact geological formation that allows these specific luxury properties to offer those intoxicating, sweeping views of the Los Angeles basin. When you look at the promotional imagery for these hilltop sanctuaries, perched high above West Hollywood and the Sunset Strip, you are sold a narrative of godlike detachment. You see massive, cantilevered glass walls, infinity pools that appear to spill directly into the glittering urban grid below, and a profound sense of elevation above the smog and traffic of the city. What the glossy brochures and heavily edited social media campaigns aggressively omit is the precarious infrastructure that makes this elevation possible. These elite properties are deeply embedded in an environment characterized by severe geological instability, accessed almost entirely by hypernarrow, decaying, and wildly unpredictable canyon roads that were originally carved out for horses and early automobiles, not fleets of heavily armored luxury transport vehicles navigating modern weather extremes. To fully understand this risk, we must analyze the historical trends of Southern California's climate cycle, which operates in a state of perpetual extremes. Los Angeles does not experience traditional seasons. It experiences distinct periods of environmental threat. From late summer through the autumn months, the region is terrorized by the Santa Ana winds, which transform the bone-dry, highly combustible chaparral surrounding these hilltop hotels into an extreme fire hazard. Conversely, the late winter months, specifically January through March, bring the devastating phenomenon known as atmospheric rivers. These are massive, concentrated bands of moisture that dump historic volumes of water onto steep, unyielding hillsides that possess virtually zero soil absorption capacity. The potential outcomes of booking a multi-thousand-dollar suite, nestled against a cliff face during one of these atmospheric events, are mathematically disastrous. Let us examine a highly instructive case study from the early months of the current year 2026. Consider Robert, a high-net-worth commercial real estate investor from Miami, who flew into Los Angeles to finalize a series of massive acquisitions in the downtown sector. Wanting to balance high-stakes negotiations with visual grandeur, Robert bypassed the fortified bunkers of the Beverly Hills Flats and deployed his travel capital into a world-renowned, architecturally significant hotel suspended deep in the hills off a legendary canyon drive. He paid $3,000 a night for a panoramic command center. However, Robert's itinerary perfectly coincided with a severe, localized atmospheric river event. Within 24 hours of his arrival, the steep canyons received over 5 inches of concentrated rainfall. The immediate reality of topographical isolation set in with brutal efficiency. The sheer volume of water triggered localized soil liquefaction. A minor mudslide, completely standard for the geography but catastrophic for logistics, brought a massive, deeply rooted eucalyptus tree crashing down across the single, twisting 2-lane road that served as the sole ingress and egress route for Robert's hotel. In an instant, his panoramic luxury suite was transformed into a beautifully decorated, high-altitude prison. The psychological shift was immediate and severe. He could look through his floor-to-ceiling glass walls and physically see the skyscrapers of downtown Los Angeles where his multi-million-dollar meetings were scheduled to take place. Yet he was completely and utterly trapped. The logistical collapse of a hilltop hotel during a topographical crisis is absolute. Rideshare applications completely shut down access to these canyon zones during heavy rain alerts, as their drivers outright refused to navigate the blind, guardrail-free curves while fighting hydroplaning and active debris flows. High-end black car services suspend operations to protect their commercial fleets. Furthermore, the operational machinery of the hotel itself grinds to a devastating halt. The invisible shadow staff that provides that effortless 5-star service relies entirely on those same compromised canyon roads to commute to the property. When the access road is blocked, the current shift of employees cannot leave, and the fresh shift cannot arrive. Service levels plummet instantaneously. Room service menus are heavily restricted to non-perishable reserves, housekeeping is entirely suspended, and the elite concierge team is reduced to simply apologizing while waiting for municipal clearing crews, who mathematically prioritize major commercial arteries and emergency routes long before they ever dispatch heavy machinery to clear a private, wealthy residential canyon enclave. Robert's travel capital was completely annihilated not because he chose a bad hotel, but because he failed to conduct a topographical audit of his accommodation. He failed to understand that panoramic dominance comes at the ultimate cost of infrastructure fragility. Imagine if you are paying an ultra-premium daily rate, yet your ability to even leave the property is entirely dependent on the structural integrity of a 50-year-old retaining wall situated a mile down a winding road you do not even own. This is the ultimate hidden gamble of Hollywood Hills hospitality. The corporate entities managing these properties will never openly disclose their egress vulnerabilities. They will never advertise that a minor, 10-minute localized downpour can cause a flash flood across their private driveway, trapping you on the premises and forcing you to forfeit highly contested dining reservations or critical business engagements. If you are traveling during the heightened risk windows of extreme fire season or winter atmospheric rivers, choosing a property situated on steep, single-access topography is a violation of basic strategic planning. You must rigorously analyze the digital map, zooming in closely to trace the actual route from the hotel's valet stand to the nearest major, multi-lane boulevard. If that route involves miles of twisting, highly elevated canyon roads with no secondary exit strategy, you are assuming a massive, uncompensated logistical risk. You are essentially betting thousands of dollars a night against the geographical realities of the Santa Monica Mountains. This brings us to a critical crossroads in our masterclass of West Coast capital deployment. If the sprawling resorts of Napa Valley are logistical nightmares hidden behind agricultural prestige, if the famous hotels of the Sunset Strip are overcrowded marketing traps, if the Beverly Hills fortresses are too isolating for a dynamic itinerary, and if the panoramic hilltop estates are terrifying structural liabilities entirely dependent on the weather, where exactly does the intelligent, data-driven American traveler anchor themselves in Los Angeles? To solve this seemingly impossible equation, we have to completely abandon the traditional geographic centers of luxury. We must turn our attention to a highly specific coastal enclave operating under an entirely independent municipal jurisdiction, a hidden nautical fortress that elite industry operators and billionaires actively use as their true, secret staging ground. This specific micromarket completely bypasses the catastrophic Los Angeles traffic grid by utilizing a highly unconventional, completely traffic-proof method of luxury transport, entirely redefining the boundaries of West Coast travel. The destination we must rigorously analyze is the highly specialized, nautically integrated coastal enclave of Marina del Rey and its adjacent ultra-luxury South Bay coastal strip. Operating under distinct municipal jurisdictions or highly localized county governance, these areas represent a radical departure from the chaotic, gridlocked reality of the greater Los Angeles basin. They possess their own localized security forces that are not subject to the severely overwhelmed dispatch queues of the Central Police Department, and they enforce draconian zoning laws that permanently prevent aggressive, high-density megaresorts from polluting the sightlines or overwhelming the local infrastructure. But the true strategic supremacy of this geographical positioning is not merely about avoiding crowds. It is about completely neutralizing the single greatest threat to your travel capital in Southern California, which is the linear highway system. By anchoring your itinerary on the extreme western edge of the continent, directly on the water, you unlock access to a highly unconventional, completely traffic-proof method of luxury transport that physically operates above and around the congestion. You transition from a terrestrial target, trapped on the 405 freeway, into an operationally fluid traveler, utilizing the aquatic and aerial bypass networks. To fully comprehend the massive logistical advantage of this strategy, we must examine a highly detailed case study from the summer of 2026 involving Jessica, a senior biotechnology executive operating out of Boston. Jessica allocated a significant budget for a strict 48-hour deployment in Los Angeles. Her itinerary was heavily fragmented, requiring a morning site visit at a specialized research facility in Deep Orange County, a critical afternoon board meeting in the dense financial district of downtown Los Angeles, and an exclusive, highly coveted dinner reservation at a private architectural compound perched on the cliffs of northern Malibu. If Jessica had utilized the standard travel methodology and booked a world-renowned, high-visibility hotel on the Sunset Strip, the mathematical probability of executing this itinerary without severe delays or complete cancellation is virtually zero. Historical trends in Los Angeles traffic data confirm that traversing from Hollywood to Orange County, back to downtown, and then out to Malibu during standard operating hours requires roughly 6 to 8 hours of vehicular transit time alone. She would have spent the vast majority of her premium vacation budget staring at the brake lights of commercial trucks, arriving at every destination in a state of profound psychological exhaustion and physical fatigue. Instead, Jessica deployed her capital into a sprawling, low-rise luxury compound situated directly on a private marina basin. This strategic placement instantly shifted the entire logistical paradigm. To reach her morning meeting in Orange County, she bypassed the highway entirely, utilizing the hotel's direct partnership with an adjacent private aviation terminal. Within 10 minutes of leaving her suite, She boarded a localized helicopter charter that delivered her to an Orange County landing pad in exactly 14 minutes, completely ignoring the 70 miles of gridlocked commuter traffic below. Following her downtown meeting, she faced the most notoriously difficult transit leg in all of Southern California, which is the migration from the city center out to the secluded estates of Malibu via the Pacific Coast Highway. The Pacific Coast Highway is a spectacularly beautiful but inherently flawed piece of infrastructure, constantly subjected to crippling weekend tourist traffic, unpredictable rock slides, and aggressive road closures. Rather than subjecting herself to this terrestrial gauntlet, Jessica utilized the ultimate West Coast operational bypass, which is high-speed maritime transit. She returned to her coastal hotel, walked directly from the lobby down to a private slip, and boarded a sleek, heavily stabilized chartered vessel. While thousands of tourists sat paralyzed in bumper-to-bumper traffic along the coastal cliffs, Jessica traveled at 30 knots over the open water, bypassing the entire terrestrial bottleneck and arriving at the Malibu pier relaxed, on schedule, and completely insulated from the friction of the urban environment. This level of logistical supremacy is precisely what you are funding when you select a nautically integrated property. You are not simply purchasing a room with an ocean view. You are purchasing temporal dominance. You are buying back the hours of your life that would otherwise be violently extracted by the regional infrastructure. The architectural and environmental reality of these coastal fortresses further justifies the heavy financial deployment. Unlike the heavily fortified bunkers of Beverly Hills that rely on massive retaining walls and biometric security gates to enforce the invisibility premium, these coastal properties utilize the Pacific Ocean itself as an impenetrable physical barrier. The ocean naturally insulates the property from the acoustic pollution of the city. There are no police sirens, no aggressive paparazzi loitering on the sidewalks, and no commercial aviation flight paths roaring overhead. Furthermore, the localized microclimate of the immediate coastline offers a profound physiological benefit that is entirely absent in the inland valleys or the Hollywood Hills. During the oppressive heat waves that regularly bake the Los Angeles basin in the late summer and early autumn of 2026, the marine layer serves as a natural, highly effective climate control system. While inland properties are forced to blast aggressive, dehydrating artificial air conditioning to maintain habitability, these coastal enclaves enjoy a persistent, naturally cooling ocean breeze that completely flushes the smog and particulate matter from the immediate atmosphere. The air quality is measurably superior, directly contributing to deeper sleep cycles, faster recovery from travel fatigue, and a vastly improved overall physiological state. The operational machinery inside these specific hotels operates with a distinct, hyper-efficient rhythm. Because they cater heavily to high-level industry operators who require absolute precision, the shadow staffing protocols are executed flawlessly. When you request a specific dietary accommodation for an early morning departure, it is not merely noted in a digital system. It is meticulously prepared, correctly temperature-controlled, and physically waiting for you at the exact minute you step out of the elevator. The staff-to-guest ratio is heavily weighted towards dedicated concierges who possess deep, unlisted contacts within the private maritime and aviation sectors, allowing them to instantly reroute your travel plans if a sudden marine fog bank necessitates a shift from aquatic transport back to a highly vetted black car service. By anchoring your Los Angeles operations in a coastal fortress, you systematically eliminate the variable of terrestrial traffic from your vacation equation. You regain total control over your schedule, your environment, and your psychological well-being. You transform a chaotic, high-stress urban survival scenario into a seamlessly orchestrated, high-yield luxury deployment. However, once you have completely mastered the coastal bypass strategy of Southern California, your West Coast education is still dangerously incomplete. To achieve true mastery of the luxury travel sector, we must now pivot our attention back to the agricultural heartland of Northern California. We must return to Napa Valley, because hidden deep within the sprawling vineyard estates and the critically acclaimed tasting rooms, a terrifying new operational trend is rapidly accelerating in the current year. We are about to expose an emerging hyper-exclusive tier of hospitality that has completely abandoned the traditional concept of public lodging. These are properties that actively refuse online bookings, intentionally obscure their nightly rates from the public eye, and require a rigorous, deeply invasive multi-stage financial and social vetting process just to view their availability calendar. Imagine attempting to deploy your travel capital into a sanctuary that mathematically profiles your entire lifestyle before deciding if you are even worthy of passing through their gates. This phenomenon is known within ultra-high net worth circles as allocation-only hospitality. To understand this radical shift in the Napa Valley landscape during the current year of 2026, we have to examine the aggressive legislative changes and localized agricultural zoning ordinances that have severely restricted commercial foot traffic on protected vineyard land over the last decade. Historical trends in Napa County demonstrate a continuous, tightening grip on what constitutes a legal agricultural experience versus a commercial hotel operation. Properties situated deep within highly sensitive agricultural preserves are legally capped on the number of transient visitors they can host per year. To survive and maximize revenue under these draconian legal frameworks, the absolute apex tier of vineyard estates completely abandoned the traditional hotel model. They realized that selling a room for $3,000 a night to a random internet tourist was a massive financial inefficiency. Instead, they transformed their physical accommodations into heavily guarded, invitation-only sanctuaries designed exclusively to court, retain, and reward their highest-tier wine allocation members. Let us analyze a highly illustrative case study involving Jonathan, a senior partner at a corporate law firm in Chicago. Jonathan is tasked with organizing a highly significant 50th birthday celebration for his spouse. He possesses an effectively unlimited travel budget and is accustomed to securing whatever he desires through premium credit card concierge services. Jonathan targets an elusive, architecturally stunning glass and timber pavilion situated on a private ridge in the Oakville appellation, a property he saw mentioned briefly in a specialized wealth management newsletter. He directs his assistant to secure a 3-night stay. The potential outcomes of this standard booking attempt are universally fatal. Jonathan does not receive a rate quote or an availability calendar. He receives a polite, highly formalized questionnaire. This questionnaire does not ask for his preferred pillow type or dietary restrictions. Instead, it systematically audits his social and financial capital within the global fine wine ecosystem. It requests a detailed inventory of his current cellar. It asks for references from other proprietary estate owners. It analyzes his historical purchasing data regarding highly allocated, limited production vintages. Jonathan, despite his immense liquid wealth, is categorically rejected because he possesses absolutely zero footprint within this hyper-specific agricultural community. He realizes too late that in this elite tier of Napa Valley, your money is completely useless if it is not backed by established, verifiable industry credibility. Imagine if your attempt to book a vacation required passing a board interview similar to purchasing a cooperative apartment in a highly restricted Manhattan building. Imagine if the property management team was explicitly instructed to decline your reservation, not because your credit card lacked funds, but because your historical consumption patterns did not align with their highly curated brand architecture. This is the terrifying, frictionless reality of allocation-only hospitality. The economic engine driving this exclusivity is brilliantly simple. The physical accommodation is not the primary revenue stream. The pavilion is merely a physical tool used to solidify a lifelong, high-volume direct-to-consumer purchasing relationship. These estates do not want a transient traveler who might buy a single bottle of Cabernet as a souvenir. They are exclusively utilizing their real estate to host the type of anchor client who will blindly commit to purchasing 30 cases of a $500 vintage every single year, sight unseen upon release. When you thoroughly analyze this underlying economic model, the extreme secrecy makes perfect strategic sense. If you are fortunate enough or connected enough to bypass the rigorous vetting process and penetrate the perimeter of one of these estates, the operational standards you encounter make traditional 5-star luxury look like a chaotic commercial transit hub. Because the guests are rigorously pre-qualified and mathematically guaranteed to generate massive ancillary revenue through ongoing wine acquisitions, all traditional transactional friction is entirely eradicated from the physical stay. There is no check-in desk because the estate manager has been actively tracking your private aviation flight path and is physically waiting for you at the perimeter gate. There is no room service menu because a private chef, often recruited directly from the Michelin-starred ecosystem of San Francisco, has already designed a hyper-localized, seasonal menu completely customized to pair perfectly with the specific library vintages the estate intends to open for you during your stay. There are no bills to sign after a meal, no exorbitant hidden resort fees tacked onto a final ledger, and absolutely no strict checkout times. The entire experience is highly engineered to feel less like a commercial transaction and vastly more like you are a deeply valued personal guest, visiting the private country estate of a billionaire benefactor. The architecture of these properties further reinforces this powerful illusion of total ownership and complete isolation. You will never see a commercial sign on the main highway. The ingress roads are often intentionally unpaved or heavily obscured by dense, old-growth tree lines to explicitly discourage casual tourists from attempting to turn around in the driveway. The physical structures are frequently built straight into the hillside, utilizing advanced subterranean construction techniques to minimize their visual impact on the surrounding terroir, while simultaneously maximizing structural thermal mass for natural, silent climate control. You are often sleeping directly above the active barrel rooms, completely and physically integrated into the agricultural heartbeat of the estate. The staff-to-guest ratio frequently exceeds 8:1, yet the employees utilize subterranean corridors and hidden service vestibules to ensure you rarely see them unless actively requested. By successfully deploying your travel capital into an allocation-only property, you achieve the absolute pinnacle of West Coast experiential luxury. You completely bypass the crowded tasting rooms, the scripted corporate tours, and the exhausting logistical puzzle of navigating the congested valley floor. You secure an impenetrable, highly protected environment where every single variable is meticulously controlled by a shadow staff entirely dedicated to your specific party. However, this presents a massive, seemingly insurmountable obstacle for the vast majority of intelligent, well-funded American travelers. If the absolute best hospitality experiences in Northern California are actively hidden behind closed doors and rigorous social vetting protocols, how does a highly successful professional from Dallas, Atlanta, or Boston actually get inside? If you do not possess a 10-year documented purchasing history with a cult winery, are you mathematically condemned to the overcrowded, highly commercialized tourist traps on Highway 29? You are not. There is a highly covert, localized backdoor into this closed ecosystem. There is a deeply specialized network of operational proxies and regional fixers who possess the exact institutional leverage required to instantly manufacture this necessary social capital on your behalf. But utilizing these regional syndicates requires learning a deeply hidden transactional language that 99% of travelers completely ignore, and choosing the wrong proxy can result in your immediate, permanent blacklisting from the entire region. To successfully navigate this treacherous, invisible landscape in the current year of 2026, you must deeply understand the operational mechanics of the regional proxy. These individuals are strictly not standard travel agents, and they are absolutely not the outsourced customer service representatives answering the toll-free numbers for your ultra-premium credit card. They are highly entrenched local fixers, specialized boutique itinerary architects, and independent, high-net-worth wine brokers who permanently reside within the hyper-specific microgeography of Napa Valley. They possess the exact institutional leverage required to instantly manufacture your necessary social capital, because they have spent decades cultivating intensely personal, fiercely guarded, reciprocal relationships with the proprietary estate owners and the notoriously protective vineyard managers. They do not request access on your behalf through a standardized booking portal. They silently negotiate your temporary induction into the ecosystem by staking their own professional reputation and establish social equity on your behavior and your financial predictability. Let us intensely analyze the catastrophic consequences of utilizing the incorrect type of intermediary through a highly specific case study. Consider Marcus, an incredibly successful aerospace logistics executive based in Seattle. Marcus recognized that he lacked the localized social capital to penetrate the allocation-only hospitality tier for a critical, high-stakes corporate retreat. Operating under outdated, conventional luxury logic, he assigned the task to his globally recognized credit card concierge service, assuming their immense international corporate brand weight would easily force the private doors open. The potential outcomes of this strategy are universally negative within the modern agricultural luxury sector. Now, imagine if Marcus had deployed his travel capital intelligently by retaining a highly specialized regional proxy. Imagine if he had hired a deeply embedded local architectural itinerary designer, whose own children attend the exact same private preparatory school as the third-generation winemaker of the target estate. This localized proxy does not send cold emails or attempt to flaunt a client's net worth. Instead, they engage in the actual transactional language of the region, which revolves entirely around the concept of allocation absorption and seller curation predictability. The proxy casually contacts the estate owner directly on their personal cellular device, entirely bypassing all formal, public-facing communication channels. The proxy communicates a very specific, highly vetted message. They vouch for your character, assuring the estate that you deeply understand the silent etiquette of agricultural luxury, and most importantly, they verbally underwrite your future purchasing intent. The proxy essentially signals to the estate that if they grant you access to their highly restricted physical accommodations, you are statistically highly likely to absorb a significant portion of their upcoming limited production vintage. You are instantaneously recategorized from a transient tourist seeking a bed into a pre-vetted, high-value acquisition target for their direct-to-consumer portfolio. This is precisely how you successfully bypass a decade of mandatory waiting lists and instantly unlock the doors to properties that technically do not exist on the public internet or any booking search engine. The proxy transfers their accumulated, decades-long social capital directly into your account for the strict duration of your stay. To fully comprehend why these multi-million-dollar estates willingly surrender their access control to these independent regional proxies, we must critically analyze the fragile financial architecture of an elite viticultural brand. These estates are producing a hyper-agricultural product entirely dependent on perceived scarcity, historical trends in critical scoring, and immense critical acclaim. Their brand equity is their single most valuable asset, frequently far exceeding the physical value of the real estate itself. If an estate allows a transient, unvetted tourist to occupy their luxury pavilions, and that tourist subsequently misbehaves, damages the fragile vineyard ecosystem, or aggressively broadcasts uncurated, low-quality content across massive social media platforms, the brand suffers immediate, highly measurable financial degradation. The proxy serves as a highly effective, completely outsourced risk mitigation department. By acting as the absolute gatekeeper, the proxy entirely insulates the estate from the unpredictable chaos of the general public. The proxy effectively underwrites the behavioral risk of the incoming guest. If Marcus had successfully retained the correct proxy, and then proceeded to violate the strict operational norms of the estate owner would not reprimand Marcus directly. They would permanently sever their highly lucrative, long-standing relationship with the proxy. Therefore, the proxy is mathematically incentivized to aggressively interrogate and vet their own clients before ever making a localized introduction, creating a flawless, self-policing luxury ecosystem that requires absolutely zero corporate hospitality oversight. However, identifying and retaining these elite regional fixers requires a rigorous step-by-step auditing process that you must execute flawlessly. You cannot simply search for them on standard internet directories because the truly powerful operators intentionally maintain a highly obscure digital footprint to permanently prevent being overwhelmed by mass-market inquiries. Your first step in this highly complex logistical operation is to reverse engineer their network. You must identify hyper-specialized, independent luxury travel consultants who actively limit their client intake to perhaps a dozen high-net-worth families per fiscal year. You must rigorously interview them, specifically demanding blinded case studies of their recent localized West Coast deployments. You must force them to explain their exact tactical methodology for securing access to properties that blatantly refuse to publish nightly rates. If they mention utilizing standard global booking platforms, submitting requests through public website portals, or relying heavily on standard corporate travel consortiums, you must immediately and permanently terminate the engagement. You are hunting for the exact individual who casually references their recent private dinner with the vineyard manager of a heavily guarded, heavily forested Howell Mountain estate. Historical trends explicitly and overwhelmingly indicate that as local agricultural ordinances continue to aggressively strangle commercial tourism throughout the 2026 calendar year, the sheer structural power and absolute necessity of these regional proxies will only compound exponentially. The gap between the standard, highly visible commercial hotel experience and the hidden, allocation-only sanctuary experience is rapidly widening into an unbridgeable chasm. If you attempt to navigate this hyper-competitive environment utilizing only your premium credit card and standard internet research methodologies, historical case studies suggest you will be systematically relegated to the lowest, most crowded tier of the hospitality infrastructure. You will unknowingly deploy thousands of dollars a night to stand shoulder to shoulder with thousands of other frustrated, heavily delayed travelers, completely oblivious to the silent, perfectly orchestrated luxury ecosystem operating just out of sight behind the unpaved driveways and unmarked heavy wooden gates. By securing the correct operational proxy, you successfully hack the geography of the West Coast. You bypass the devastating logistical flaws of the a la carte vacation assembly. You entirely neutralize the aggressive extraction mechanisms of the highly commercialized zones in both Los Angeles and Napa, and you position yourself precisely within the most coveted, highly protected environments available. You permanently transition your travel capital from a highly inefficient, high-friction expenditure into a surgically precise deployment that yields unparalleled experiential returns and complete logistical dominance. But securing the reservation, successfully bypassing the digital perimeter, and physically breaching the actual physical gates of these hidden estates is only the initial phase of the operation. Once those heavy wooden gates silently close behind your private luxury transport vehicle, and you are finally standing inside the most exclusive, heavily guarded hospitality environment in North America, a completely different, intensely psychological dynamic immediately takes absolute control. You are no longer fighting the chaotic logistics of the outside world. You are now actively being subjected to a rigorous, completely silent, and continuous behavioral audit by the invisible shadow staff. You are entering an incredibly delicate environment, governed by a hyper-specific, entirely unspoken set of physical protocols and complex social expectations. Failing to flawlessly execute these hidden operational protocols will not just ruin your immediate itinerary. It will result in your proxy permanently severing their relationship with you on the spot, mathematically ensuring you are never allowed back into the West Coast ecosystem. We must immediately dissect the terrifying psychological reality of the estate protocol and expose exactly what the shadow staff is quietly analyzing every single time you step out of your suite. The estate protocol is the absolute apex of behavioral evaluation within the modern luxury travel sector, operating on a foundational principle that you must rapidly internalize to survive your deployment in the current year of 2026. This principle dictates that the moment your vehicle crosses the threshold of an allocation-only property in Napa Valley or a hyper-exclusive coastal fortress in Los Angeles, you mathematically cease to be a paying customer. The traditional, deeply ingrained American consumer dynamic where the guest is always right and financial leverage dictates the level of service is completely suspended. Instead, you transition instantly into the role of a highly scrutinized, temporary custodian of a fragile, multi-million-dollar brand ecosystem. The invisible shadow staff is not merely there to pour your wine or press your garments. They act as a highly calibrated intelligence-gathering network, quietly observing your acoustic footprint, your spatial awareness, and your baseline level of transactional friction. They are constantly updating an invisible ledger that will ultimately dictate whether your regional proxy is allowed to ever send you back. To understand the terrifying efficiency of this behavioral audit, we must analyze the concept of the acoustic footprint. In a standard 5-star commercial hotel on the Sunset Strip, ambient noise is expected and tolerated. Guests loudly conduct business on their cellular devices in the lobby, they drag heavy luggage across marble floors, and they project their voices across crowded dining rooms. In the highly fortified sanctuaries of the West Coast, silence is the ultimate, most heavily guarded commodity. The architecture itself, utilizing advanced acoustic dampening materials and subterranean construction, is explicitly designed to isolate and highlight sound. Imagine if you are granted access to a private, glass-wall tasting pavilion overlooking the St. Helena Valley floor, and you immediately initiate a loud, aggressive conference call regarding your corporate logistics back home. You are not just being rude. You are actively polluting the highly curated sensory environment that the estate has spent millions of dollars engineering. The staff will not ask you to lower your voice. They will simply observe the disruption, noting that you lack the fundamental spatial awareness required to exist within their ecosystem, and your behavioral score will instantly plummet. Let us examine a devastating case study involving William, a highly aggressive private equity director from New York orchestrating a high-stakes team-building retreat in Napa Valley during the spring of 2026. William successfully utilized a regional proxy to bypass the public waiting lists and secure a private, multi-day deployment at a highly sought-after, allocation-only estate in the Rutherford appellation. However, William completely failed to adjust his behavioral matrix to the estate protocol. He treated the shadow staff precisely as he would treat the overwhelmed employees at a standard corporate airport lounge. During a meticulously curated, 7-course pairing dinner designed by the estate's private chef to showcase their library vintages, William aggressively demanded that the sommelier deviate from the program and open a highly specific, commercially famous bottle of wine he preferred, actively dismissing the chef's culinary narrative. The potential outcomes for this specific type of behavioral friction are swift and entirely invisible. The sommelier did not argue. The sommelier flawlessly retrieved the bottle William demanded, opened it with perfect precision, and maintained a flawless, professional demeanor. William assumed he had successfully asserted his dominance and received superior service. What William failed to comprehend was the silent execution of the psychological audit. The staff documented his blatant disregard for their curated experience. They calculated the emotional labor required to manage his aggressive demands, cross-referencing that friction against the mathematical probability of his future wine acquisitions. By the time William finished his dessert, the estate manager had already sent a highly encrypted, coded message to his regional proxy. The message simply stated that William lacked the requisite cultural alignment for the property. Upon checkout, William was permanently and silently blacklisted from the entire upper echelon of the Northern California Agricultural Hospitality Network. His money was accepted, but his future access was entirely revoked. To successfully navigate the estate protocol, you must adopt the tactical posture of the gracious custodian. This involves entirely relinquishing control over the micro-logistics of your stay and demonstrating an absolute deference to the expertise of the operators. When you are seated with a third-generation vineyard manager for a private tasting, you do not boast about the sheer volume of expensive bottles currently sitting in your personal cellar. You engage them on the highly specific historical trends of their terroir. You ask incredibly targeted questions regarding their soil composition, their specific grafting techniques, and how the localized microclimates of the 2026 growing season are impacting their yield. You demonstrate that you deeply respect the agricultural reality of their product, proving that you are an intelligent, low-friction participant who adds intellectual value to the interaction, rather than extracting emotional labor from the staff. Furthermore, you must exercise extreme digital discretion, understanding the absolute, unspoken embargo on social media broadcasting. These properties derive their immense value from the invisibility premium. They are the chosen sanctuaries for global industry operators, A-list entertainment figures, and ultra-high net worth individuals who require absolute privacy to function. Imagine if you are lounging by a private infinity pool seamlessly integrated into a coastal Los Angeles cliffside, and you instinctively pull out your cellular device to record a sweeping panoramic video, inadvertently capturing another high-profile guest in the background. In a standard commercial hotel, this is standard marketing behavior. Under the strict enforcement of the estate protocol, it is considered a catastrophic security breach. The shadow staff will immediately intervene, politely but firmly requesting that you secure your device, while simultaneously flagging your profile as a massive liability to the privacy of their anchor clients. The shadow staff is meticulously analyzing how you treat the invisible infrastructure. Do you leave your luxury suite in a state of chaotic disarray, forcing the shadow housekeeping team to expend maximum effort to reset the environment? Or do you maintain a baseline level of organizational respect for the physical space? Do you snap your fingers to summon a private butler? Or do you utilize the discreet, encrypted digital communication tablets provided in the suite to quietly place your requests? Every single micro-interaction is a data point feeding into your overall guest profile. If you prove yourself to be a high-yield, low-friction entity, the historical trends suggest that the estate will silently flag you as an approved recurring asset. They will proactively reach out to your proxy before the public release of their next highly allocated vintage, offering you right of first refusal on their most coveted products, and seamlessly inviting you back for future deployments without requiring the initial vetting process. You have now successfully decoded the logistical nightmares of the West Coast traffic grid. You have identified the coastal fortresses that bypass the terrestrial infrastructure. You have learned how to utilize regional proxies to breach the invisible walls of allocation-only agricultural estates, and you have mastered the terrifying psychological audit of the estate protocol. You possess the complete analytical framework required to deploy your travel capital with absolute, surgical precision. However, there is one final, incredibly dangerous trap waiting at the very end of your itinerary: a massive financial extraction mechanism embedded deep within the highly complex departure logistics of these elite properties. As you prepare to transition your assets back out of the California ecosystem, you must understand exactly how the final billing architecture operates, because failing to recognize this specific silent financial maneuver will instantly evaporate thousands of dollars from your accounts before you even reach the tarmac for your private aviation departure. This financial extraction mechanism is known within the highest echelons of hospitality financial management as the phantom ledger, and it is the direct, terrifying consequence of the frictionless inclusion model we analyzed earlier. Remember the core appeal of these allocation-only estates and coastal fortresses: the complete eradication of standard commercial transactions. You do not sign for your morning artisan espresso, You do not physically present a credit card to the sommelier after a 7-course library tasting, and you are never handed a physical clipboard by the shadow staff. The psychological objective of the property is to make you completely forget that you are actively spending money. This creates a profound state of financial amnesia. You become so deeply immersed in the curated illusion of being a personal guest at a private estate that your natural defensive consumer instincts are entirely deactivated. In the current year of 2026, corporate hospitality algorithms have calculated precisely how to monetize this psychological vulnerability during the final hours of your deployment. To fully comprehend the devastating power of the phantom ledger, we must examine a highly specific case study involving Thomas, a prominent venture capitalist from Miami. Thomas successfully navigated the proxy system and secured a phenomenal 3-day deployment at a deeply isolated, allocation-only vineyard estate nestled high in the Spring Mountain district of Napa Valley. Throughout his stay, Thomas operated under the assumption of standard luxury billing. He requested off-menu culinary items. He casually asked the estate manager to arrange a last-minute helicopter transfer to a neighboring appellation, and most importantly, he successfully absorbed his required allocation, purchasing 3 cases of a highly coveted, limited-production Cabernet Sauvignon. The potential outcomes of his departure seemed straightforward. He expected to pay his nightly room rate, the base cost of the wine, and a standard hospitality gratuity. However, Thomas failed to understand the mechanics of soft billing. Because he never signed a physical receipt for the helicopter transfer, he did not realize the estate utilized an external, ultra-premium aviation contractor that charged a massive premium for short-notice rural deployments, effectively tripling the standard charter rate. But the most catastrophic extraction occurred regarding the wine acquisition. In a standard retail environment, you purchase a product and carry it out the door. In the ultra-luxury viticultural ecosystem, taking physical possession of high-value liquid assets is heavily discouraged. The estate manager smoothly offered to handle all the logistics of transporting the wine back to Thomas's climate-controlled cellar in Florida. Thomas, operating in a state of relaxed financial amnesia, verbally agreed without requesting a logistical breakdown. Historical trends in high-value agricultural transport demonstrate that these estates do not utilize standard commercial shipping companies. They utilize proprietary, heavily insured, military-grade climate-controlled logistics networks. They factor in the exact temperature variations across the continental United States, specialized shock-absorbent packaging, and aggressive interstate alcohol taxation compliance protocols. When Thomas finally received his encrypted digital folio, while sitting on the tarmac waiting for his private flight home, he was subjected to a profound financial shock. The phantom ledger had activated. He was not merely billed for the wine. He was billed a massive, unitemized estate logistics tariff that equaled nearly 40% of the total value of the wine itself. Furthermore, the estate applied an automatic, non-negotiable 22% operational gratuity surcharge not just to his room rate, but to the entirety of his cumulative spend, including the heavily inflated aviation charter and the astronomical shipping logistics. Thousands of dollars of his travel capital instantly evaporated simply because he failed to audit the invisible billing architecture before giving his verbal consent. Imagine if you allowed a corporate entity to completely dictate the terms of your final invoice based entirely on your casual, undocumented conversations with their staff. Imagine if every single request you made during your stay was quietly being categorized as a premium, expedited service subject to hidden multipliers and exponential gratuity structures. This is the exact trap that captures highly intelligent, successful professionals at the end of their West Coast deployments. They are so eager to maintain the illusion of seamless luxury, and so terrified of appearing financially anxious in front of the elite shadow staff, that they blindly accept the final extraction without question. They hand over their capital simply to avoid breaking the estate protocol during their final moments on the property. To permanently neutralize this threat, you must implement a rigorous departure audit strategy precisely 24 hours before you physically leave the environment. You do not wait until you are packing your garments or waiting for your luxury transport vehicle to arrive. You proactively contact your regional proxy and instruct them to intercept the preliminary folio from the estate manager. You force the property to transition the invisible phantom ledger into a highly visible, strictly itemized spreadsheet. By utilizing your proxy to conduct this financial audit, you maintain your tactical posture as the gracious custodian. You are not physically arguing with the shadow staff over helicopter fees. Your proxy is handling the aggressive financial negotiations offsite, protecting your social capital while simultaneously defending your financial assets. You must explicitly demand that all logistical operations, particularly the transport of acquired wine or high-value physical goods, be strictly decoupled from the hospitality ledger. You inform the estate that your own private wealth management team or dedicated logistics contractor will handle the extraction of the physical assets. By removing the transport variable from the hotel's control, you completely bypass their proprietary shipping tariffs and eliminate the massive, uncalculated gratuity surcharges attached to those services. You regain total control over the mathematical reality of your vacation, ensuring that the capital you deployed actually went toward your experiential return, rather than disappearing into a hidden matrix of tertiary operational fees. When you synthesize this entire analytical framework, you realize that traveling to the American West Coast in the modern era is no longer a simple act of booking a flight and a hotel room. It is a highly complex, deeply strategic capital deployment that requires military-level logistical planning, a profound understanding of localized geographical threats, the utilization of invisible social proxies, and an impenetrable defense against psychological financial extraction. You now possess the precise tactical knowledge required to dominate the California luxury market, bypassing the crowded commercial traps of Los Angeles and penetrating the deepest, most heavily guarded allocation-only agricultural sanctuaries of Napa Valley. You understand how to weaponize the infrastructure, how to read the silent transactional language of the elite, and how to command the estate protocol. But the absolute mastery of domestic travel is merely the foundational training ground for a vastly more dangerous global theater. What happens when you attempt to take this highly calibrated, proxy-dependent West Coast framework and apply it to the deeply entrenched, historically rigid luxury markets of the European continent? The exact tactics that unlock a hidden vineyard in Northern California will result in your immediate, highly publicized removal from a multi-generational heritage property in the French Alps or the Amalfi Coast. The European shadow network operates under a completely different, ancient set of social laws, utilizing architectural deception and sovereign wealth influence that makes the California market look like child's play. You are about to face a completely different class of gatekeeper, and the financial consequences of a miscalculation in this new theater are permanently catastrophic.